Welcome back to another edition of Breakfast with the Beards. My name's Kyle Prince, and with me is Brett Roberts. How you doing?
I'm hungry.
I am too. So we we have yet to eat breakfast. We had a 5:30 a.m. wake up, or no, a 5 a.m. wake up. I believe it's
5:30. It's all the same. When it's pitch black out at the park.
Yeah, it was a little. It's been a rough one.
So I think today's gonna be brunch with the Beards. It's gonna be a little bigger breakfast later on after this recording.
Naps with the Beards, maybe even.
Beards,
yeah, that'd be good. Yeah. So we had a short drive from Dallas yesterday. We are here in Austin, Texas at Round Rock 3 at Dell HQ, hanging out in the Customer Solution Center. We'll get into that a bit later. But with the short drive doesn't mean it wasn't eventful. We had a bit of fun listening to the Dallas Cowboys at first, and then it got a little sad.
It was fun for me the entire time. Shout out Patriots.
Poor Corey had to drive and listen to the defeat of the Cowboys, and we did what we could to keep his spirits up. But unfortunately, one man can only take so many Red Bulls in a day. So that's okay. We did have a couple other firsts. This is my first time in Round Rock at Dell HQ.
Yeah,
so
welcome.
That's super exciting. Yeah, thank you.
What do you think?
It's very beautiful. I'm excited to see what's on the other side of this wall. I hear we have a pretty large data center back there. So we're going to go in there and try and unplug some cables until they catch us. We'll see how that goes. But yesterday we also stopped at a place called Buc-ee's.
It's a gas station, but it's really a small village almost.
Yeah,
Buc-ee's is an event.
Yeah,
it really
crazy.
was. It was a pilgrimage for us. We had no idea what we were getting into. Loved the logo, and it was just gas station pumps for days. And then we had a little bit, we walked in and extremely overwhelming, extremely exciting. And then we saw the pinnacle of Buc-ee's, which was the beef brisket sandwich.
Oh, that was so good. I mean, you have everything from Halloween costumes. They actually had like a shirt with office characters on it. So you have that all the way to like cast iron pans, delicious food, jerky. I mean, it contained everything.
Yeah. What was your favorite part of the Buc-ee's experience?
I honestly think it was actually having the recording there.
Yeah.
Getting some sun, maybe a little sunburn.
Yeah,
and then
very much.
having the Dallas user meetup group come check out the RV, walk around, having some drinks, some Coke, some Sprites, and then some delicious brisket sandwiches.
Oh, it was great. Thank you, Greg and Noah Woodcock, for having us out there. It was a wonderful time. And then we went ahead and headed off the road, headed over to Slovaceks through Waco, and then headed out there, and we picked up some kolaches. Now, Brett, that was your first kolache as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, because we can't just have gas station food at one location. We have to go to 3 or 4 each day. It was delicious, though, and I'm looking forward to having that for brunch with the Beards today.
I don't know what we're going to do when we actually eat at a restaurant for once. It's going to be quite interesting. Anyways, we did run into some technical troubles yesterday. So because of our 4G access point, we only have a limited number of connections. So as we were onboarding new devices yesterday, we hit our 15 device limit. So we are now about to have a fantasy draft style of what device is going to get kicked off the network so we can onboard more.
I think it's going to be Survivor style.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Hunger Games.
We'll just start throwing devices out of the RV as they're disconnected
See
from
which
the
one
Wi-Fi
breaks first.
points. Yeah. But on top of that, maybe we'll see what one can handle a shock test from the RV as well, because we might be the first people to ever catch air in an RV. Some of these roads yesterday on the way right through Waco, we caught some air. We were only doing about 65, but we're pretty excited to see what those vibration sensors look like, as well as visiting our local chiropractors, because wow, that was quite a bit of fun.
I'm just glad I didn't have the VR headset on and on a roller coaster, because that would have freaked me out completely.
I would have been throwing up. Oh, this is rough. Anyways, we did not get some time for Tinker Time, but we will go into that a little bit later today. We have a fun little solution around that with what we've been seeing from our friends over here. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the gentleman in blue to our left and right. With us, we have Rob Wilbert and Kris Applegate. How you guys doing?
Hey, doing well, thank you.
So you guys work for Dell Technologies, correct?
That's correct.
And what exactly do you do for Dell Technologies?
Sure. So Rob and I are part of the Customer Solution Centers here in Round Rock.
Okay. Now, what exactly is a Customer Solution Centers?
Sure. So the Customer Solution Center is a network of labs throughout the globe, and our mission is to directly engage with customers to demonstrate the value of the Dell Technologies portfolio. And that value can be manifested as technical briefings, whiteboarding sessions, and even executing proofs of concept out of our labs for customers, and all at no cost to them.
Wow. So it's a bit more of a executive briefing, but super technical as well.
Yeah, I mean, in the way that executive briefing centers speak to the value of the strategic relationship you can make with Dell Technologies and the types of business outcomes that you're looking to drive, we start to focus on how do we make that real? So while we might understand something as complex as Dell's strategy around multicloud, what does that look like in my data center? How will that interface with my top of rack switches? What teams do I need to engage for this to be successful? What if I want to kick the tires of it prior to purchase? That next phase of the conversation for our customers.
Okay. And did I hear you correct? The cost was how much again?
Yeah, it's completely free to Dell customers, Dell partners. This is just part of the strategic value of partnering with Dell.
Okay. And let's say we were interested in doing this. How do we get in touch with you all?
Sure. So the best method is just to engage your Dell account team and have that Dell account team create an engagement request with us. And then we'll talk over what exactly you're looking to discuss, right? And as we have more and more of these engagements, that path becomes a lot more friction-free.
Now, we are at the one in Round Rock,
Yep.
but this is not the only one.
Yeah, so there are 19 throughout the globe. Here in the U.S., there's 6 of them. And so that's our largest is here in Round Rock. But we also have facilities in Santa Clara, in the heart of Silicon Valley. We have Chicago, D.C., Nashville, and then even in Manhattan, where we were just in Penn Plaza. You get off the train and you take the elevator.
Too easy. I love it. So how long have you guys been working at these Customer Solution Centers?
So both Rob and I have been here for quite some time. We're veterans of the Solution Center. I believe we're in year 8, and Rob, you might be in year 7?
I think I'm on just past year 9. So.
Oh, wow. Then I must be 9 plus.
Wow.
I think I was just before Rob.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, we've seen a bit of tech today. You guys took us a bit of a tour, gave some insights into it. I see a lot of technology, but one of the things that we talk about a lot is the rapid innovation of technology. Just how up to date are these solution centers?
Yeah, so the solution centers, we get the opportunity to not just have gear as our customers get it, but even sometimes pre-production gear. An example of that would be our new AMD EPYC 2 platform. That's something we've had in the Solution Center and been running benchmarks for customers well prior to the announcement and the release.
Wow.
So we keep things, even ahead of the bleeding edge.
Wow, that's great. Now, Round Rock is the largest solution center?
It is the largest, both in terms of equipment and racks, but also with personnel. But that doesn't mean that we can't surface those same capabilities at any solution center throughout the globe. We've got a dedicated network that interlinks every single solution center. So whether we're leveraging equipment or personnel, every solution centers can feel as big as this solution centers.
That's great. That's great.
Now, do you have remote capabilities as well for customers that might not be able to come to Round Rock, but they want to have that engage that conversation with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the opportunities there are limitless. Some types of discussions lend themselves more to being in person, but we try not to handcuff opportunities. So if it's a technical briefing, those are easy to do in a webinar style. Whiteboarding sessions get a little bit harder to do remotely, but proofs of concept, many of our customers choose to execute those over the course of a week, or in some cases 2 weeks, from the comfort of their own offices over a VPN.
So you can do everything from a very short 30-minute, 90-minute conversation all the way to a longer, multi-week proof of concept that you span all full capabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. Those technical briefings, again, those are generally done earlier in the sales motion as customers are discovering what's Dell's perspective on these topics, what's their technical perspective on these topics. And then the whiteboardings get, once they've matured in that decision-making process, and now they want to understand what that could look like, how big would it be, how many nodes would it be, what type of processors, what disk configs, those types of real detailed, granular technical stuff. And then, like Brett, you mentioned the proofs of concept where they're actually sitting on the gear, executing either functional or performance proofs of concept to help justify to their leadership or to themselves that this solution is going to meet their needs.
That's great. Now, you seem to have a lot of different use cases. Can you touch on a couple of the major use cases that you see from the Customer Solution Center, things like IoT or machine learning?
Yeah, so oftentimes people are just looking for what does it feel like? And that's something that's really hard for customers to understand until they're on the equipment, right? Oftentimes customers want to do functional proofs of concept. Well, I can see plenty of recordings of videos and even slides on what the management experience of a particular device looks like. I am a visual and hands-on person, and many of our customers are, and I think many people in the technical industry are. And so we want to be able to get on that. And I want to experience, when I click on this, this happens. When I need to create an account, this is how I do it. And that's when the dots start really connecting together for a lot of our customers.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Now, you've been working here for 9 years, both of you. I imagine you've seen quite a bit of technology through this. What's been your favorite piece of tech here lately to kind of tinker with or play with or work on? What's really been your focal point lately? What have you been enjoying?
So my area of expertise in my domain is specifically around technology like Kubernetes and containers and the cloud native dimension of things. And so the announcements coming out of Dell Technologies and VMware around Project Tanzu Mission Control, Pacific, all of these things are bringing Kubernetes to be more of a first-class citizen inside the VMware portfolio. And the easiest way to stand up the VMware portfolio is on Dell EMC hardware. So this is going to really have a earth-shaking impact, I think, on what our customers are able to do with our platforms.
Now, you mentioned two specific projects there, Tanzu and Pacific. Could you provide just a very high-level overview of that for everybody?
So the strategy in VMware is to build, run, and manage container workloads. And so when we look at the ability to build those, that's the Bitnami and Pivotal technology. But the running those, Pacific is focused on bringing containers and Kubernetes pods as first-class citizens into the ESXi experience, right? So being able to instantiate those directly from ESXi, just like you could a VM. And then Mission Control fits in that managed portfolio, where what if I want to manage multiple disparate Kubernetes clusters of different versions inside different clouds and be able to manage that from a single console? That's what Tanzu Mission Control is about.
That's great.
So, Rob, what about you? What's the coolest, latest tech that you've played with in the CSC?
Well, I'm really excited. So we just got some of the Intel's new Optane DC persistent memory here in the Solution Center. And so we've been kind of playing around with that. And what DC persistent memory does is it brings memory class persistent memory on the memory bus adjacent to the CPU, so you can vastly improve the performance of various workloads. But what's additionally interesting is DC persistent memory also acts as can act as a memory tier as well, so a high capacity memory tier. So now you can put upwards of 6 terabytes on a 2-socket system. And what's interesting is the price point of that is much lower than traditional DRAM. So for customers that have CPU intensive workloads, traditionally they may have had a silver or a low end gold processor, but now they can replace DRAM with persistent memory, and the cost savings on the memory can upgrade them to a platinum based processor. So now they can get much more cores and processing speed by switching from DRAM to persistent memory. So there's a lot of really interesting use cases, both from a persistent workload perspective, having the persistent memory on the memory bus, but then also from a memory tier where you can upgrade your CPU at the same cost.
Yeah, and obviously Splunk is a very CPU intensive workload. Yep. So this plays very nicely into that story as well.
Yeah.
So Rob, what do you focus on in the CEC? Like, what's your area of expertise?
So like Kris, I focus on kind of emerging technologies, but I'm a little bit different. So it's IoT, complex workloads like database and Splunk, and then other emerging technologies like DC persistent memory and what that actually does for some of these complex workloads, such as Splunk. Haven't quite gotten there yet. We just got the gear in, but there's the wheels are already spinning in my head as to how Splunk could potentially leverage persistent memory to solve some of the use cases out there.
So we've also heard quite a bit of IoT through our conversations as well. What are some of the challenges that you all are seeing from the customers or for the customers from an IoT perspective?
Yeah. So a lot of customers that come through here, a lot of them are they have an IoT story right now or a use case, or they're trying to get their feet wet into it. And so their biggest challenge is around as you know, there's kind of two sides of it. There's the operation side and there's the IT side. So the OT folks, they're more interested in the data coming off of the IoT sensors and how do I make use of that data. So they're very interested in machine learning and AI so that they can make business decisions and predict various things, whether it's machine failure or other things. But then on the IT side, they're concerned about, well, how do I enroll these devices? How do I manage these devices? How do I secure them? And so customers that are coming in, we see both sides. And so what we try to do is help both the OT and the IT guys come together to say, here's how you build an IoT solution. Now, at the end of the day, Dell Technologies isn't necessarily selling an IoT solution. We're helping customers understand what an IoT solution would look like and leveraging some of our own products such as VMware Pulse, which is IoT edge management, but then also leveraging our best of breed partners who understand the use cases and they build the sensors and they build some of the IoT devices, leveraging their expertise to come in to help customers build that IoT story. So you have satisfying both the OT, the business side, as well as the IT side.
Wow. So it's almost creating a holistic view of the IoT strategy.
Exactly. Yep.
Oh, that's great. Now, we hear quite a bit around the power of Dell Technologies. Can you guys expand on that? What exactly does that mean through the power of Dell Technologies?
Yeah, I think the idea there is that you're not going to find any other vendor that has a more complete vision of the story and the ability to execute on it, right? When we start looking at technology like IoT as a perfect example and what you guys are doing on the RV, it's instantiating compute capacity at the edge. It's pushing that into the data centers that run inside our businesses, the core, and even on out into public clouds, and having a public cloud presence and being able to stand up a similar consistent dial tone across all of those. Nobody can do it in a single organization from that laptop that sits at the edge through the networking that connects it to your core data center, everything, the compute storage and networking that sits in that core data center, and then the egress networking and network of partnerships and offerings that sit in the public cloud to have that completeness of vision when it comes to where you need to stand up your workload at any given point in time. That's the power of the Dell Technologies family of companies.
It's fascinating. Now, when you hear of Dell a bit, you tend to, if you immediately think of Dell, you think servers, exactly. But we're hearing quite a bit of a story around there's cloud to worry about, there's on-premises cloud, there's off-premises cloud, there's public cloud, private cloud. Do you have a bit of, can you share a bit around the Dell Technologies multi-cloud strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way that we have this conversation with our customers is to walk through a whiteboarding session and show them what our strategy is. So I'd like to do that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Can you stop the Zoom?
Yeah, but this is a microphone.
Ah, okay.
So I wanna-
wasn't sure if that's the preamp for that microphone as well.
Oh, well, that's true. I guess we don't really necessarily need the cloud because we aren't going there. So that's true.
It's just
No cloud needed.
sometimes.
All right.
Always good.
Ready?
It's your show, brother.
So this is a conversation that we have with our customers in the Customer Solution Center very frequently. They're trying to understand what is multi-cloud. And the first thing I would like to do is clear up the air on when we say multi-cloud, well, shoot, I just got done understanding over the last couple of years what cloud is as an access pattern. And then even we started hearing about hybrid cloud, and now you guys have already moved on to multi-cloud. So it all stems from conversations we have with our customers. Right? And when we asked our customers, how many of you are running your workloads in more than one cloud today? And we already had the vast majority, overwhelming majority said that they were already running in at least 2 clouds. We then asked that same group of people, how many clouds in total are you running? The vast majority of that group of customers were already running in 5 or more clouds. So when we start thinking about the need to stand up my workloads in a variety of locations, that is already an IT reality. Right? Customers are already dealing with that today. So what are the catalysts for the ability to stand up our workloads in different locations? I like to boil it down to what I call the 3 sets of laws. Right? And so we'll start with the laws of physics. Right? And these are things like network latency. Right? Network connectivity and availability of that connectivity. And then even the volume of data. If you think about it, the latency in remote locations and my edge locations might not be such that I can wait for a decision to traverse over some connection, calculation being made, and derive results. Maybe my use case doesn't lend itself to that. Maybe it's, in the case of many of our hospitals and healthcare organizations, there's actually lives on the line there. If I have to batch up that data, process it, do machine learning and inferencing there, have that trigger a decision-making process, and somebody gets paged, that might be the difference between life and death. So I can't wait for that latency. The availability of connectivity. This is really popular in places like you talk about mining rigs or places that are remote. Your RV, right? The RV that the big data beard is going through. You don't have a reliable connectivity of sufficient bandwidth at every location. Does that mean you can't do business in those locations? Not necessarily. And then finally, the sheer volume of data. When we talk about the number of sensors, the amount of telemetry from those sensors is only going up. I might not be able to push a terabyte of data from a remote location to another one in a realistic amount of time for that decision to matter at that point in time. Right? The next set of laws we talk about are the laws of the land. And so this can be anything from data privacy to data residency and even tax jurisdictions. Right? You think about places like Germany, and there are intense regulations on every asset of data collected about German citizens must reside in data centers that are located in Germany. If I've partnered with a cloud that doesn't have endpoints in Germany, does that mean I can no longer do business in that country? Right? Data residency, that's the same type of thing, of data that must reside in that location. And then finally, tax jurisdictions. As more and more cities, states, and countries start to look at the revenue derived out of cloud data centers, they might want a piece of that action. After all, it is their resources and their personnel that are staffing those data centers. Maybe the ability to move my workload around to different cloud data centers could become advantageous for our customers. Right? And the last set of laws that we like to talk about are the laws of economics. Right? And this is the simple cost of my compute, storage, or networking might be such that it doesn't make sense to lease capacity from somebody else. Right? When we talk to our customers, no product in the history of mankind, if I intend to use it for a long amount of time, does it make more sense to pay somebody else to run it than it does to go ahead and buy that outright myself? Right? And so a lot of customers, their CFOs are doing these calculations and they're seeing the $1 million public cloud bills and saying, look, we should have just stood up this infrastructure. How can we have a strategy so that we can do that in a more seamless fashion? Right? And so these are the three sets of laws. The thing you don't see up here are technical limitations, right? This is because inside Dell Technologies, we can provide the portability to be able to move our workloads to any of the other locations to overcome these hurdles, right? And we do that through the software-defined data center. And when you think about software-defined data center, that starts with the software-defined compute. We've been doing that for years. We do that inside ESX. We bring to the party software-defined storage, and we do that inside vSAN. And finally now, software-defined networking has become mature enough that we're seeing more and more enterprises adopt that. These three things form the software-defined data center. And the software-defined data center software governs the life cycle of all of these, manages the devices, and manages all of this technology. Right? And so it's in this power that we're able to provide that true level of portability. So when we talk about where are the locations that I might have to run this, we generally classify it into three sets of locations. So the first one that most of us are the most familiar with is my data center with my IT staff. We call that core. Well, then if I have my data center with my IT staff, obviously I have somebody else's data center with somebody else's IT staff. That's what we call cloud. And then finally, what about locations where I may not have any data center or any IT staff? We classify that as edge. And the idea here is in these three types of locations, I want to be able to stand up a level of consistency. And when we think about consistency, right, that consistency comes at consistency of infrastructure. The properties of the types of workloads are very similar across all of these locations. The fact that I'm using virtualization means I can add vCPUs, I can add memory, I can expand the disk, right? If I have different properties of my workloads or different properties of the infrastructure in one location versus another, that's going to constrain my ability to do that, right? Having common shared types of infrastructure and technologies is an imperative. This allows me to operate my cloud, right? So consistency in ops, meaning that when I have a technician that needs to restart a virtual machine, it would be great if the technology to restart that virtual machine and the credentials and tools that I'm using to do that is similar here and here, right? Otherwise, when maybe he knows how to use VMware to kick a VM when it's fallen over and restart that, but if he doesn't have access to EC2 or he doesn't know how to use it, he might not be able to do that in a tool like just AWS, right? Capitalizing on the training of the individuals that are actually maintaining these so they can be able to perform in all three of these locations without an additional level of training, again, it gives our customers an advantage. And so consistency in infrastructure and ops allows me to establish consistent services to my end user. And so when we think about what those services is, pick your poison. Maybe customers or constituents are bringing you virtual machines, so I need to be able to stand up infrastructure as a service. Maybe they're bringing you something smaller than a virtual machine. Maybe they're bringing you a container or even a set of Kubernetes pods. That's great because I can stand up containers as a service. Well, maybe they're not IT people at all and they simply bring you source code. They're developers. That's great. I can take that source code and I can run it on my cloud on a platform as a service. Right? What if they have just a small element of code that needs to be run at scale? IoT, where it's has particular dependency on this type of technology. They have a small function that has to run anywhere from 0 times a second to 1,000,000 times a second. Right? This is where I can stand up functions as a service. And finally, as they start to leverage commercial off-the-shelf vendors, I might need to be able to stand up software as a service. But you see, all of these services to my users reside above this level of consistency, right? Meaning that irrespective of which of these technologies that I choose to stand up, I can use a common set of infrastructure, operations, and services. So how do we do that inside Dell Technologies? Well, let's start with standing up the software-defined data center in my data center with my IT staff. This is where we can leverage VMware's cloud foundations, right? VCF, to be able to stand up that software-defined data center on a whole variety of different platforms. Maybe we start with the VxRail, right? This has all of the lifecycle management and automation built into it so that the users only have to worry about anything from the hypervisor and up, and the platform takes care of all the patching of the systems, all the patching of the hardware, BIOS updates, and everything. It's the fullest experience of a private cloud, right? VCF on VxRail. But maybe it's not going to work for every customer. Maybe due to constraints like my capital expenditure, my budget, or my need for flexibility, I have to have something else. Well, that's okay because we can still help you by standing up VCF on VMware's validated designs. And so this would be using technology like our vSAN Ready nodes, where maybe you lose a little bit of the automation and lifecycle management that this provides, but in that you gain some more flexibility. You gain a wider portion of the portfolio, right? And we've already done the preliminary compatibility. We make sure every element of data or every element or component talks to each other. So your IT teams don't have to spend all of that, nauseating busy work validating this version of firmware works when it's put on this version of drive connected to this type of disk controller running this version of firmware inside this chassis, inside this PCIe slot, with this version of vSAN on this version of ESX. You see how many links there can be. And having to do that for every component in every one of your servers, every time you need to patch, right? A lot of our customers say, can you just give me all the components that we know work together? That's what a validated design can do. But we still realize that this doesn't meet every one of our customers' needs. Again, due to the initial CapEx cost or due to an increased need for flexibility, you can still use the bricks that we make inside Dell Technologies to build your own cloud, right? And as customers want to continue to make decisions along this line, as you move down this list, sure, you increase your flexibility, but you do also increase your risk, right? You're going to have to spend a little bit more time engineering this than this, and a little bit more time engineering this than this, right? But again, customers should be empowered to choose which one of these solutions works for them. And so the ability to move inside this list, again, is an imperative to many of our customers. Well, this solves the problem for my data center with my IT staff. What about over here with somebody else's data center, with somebody else's IT staff? Well, we stand up the software-defined data center out here in the cloud, using VMware's managed cloud, right? This is where you don't have to worry about any of those elements. You don't have to worry about the nodes of your server, the configuration, and whether I need to replace a drive now or whatever order I have to do those operations. Somebody else is managing that for you. And so the clouds that you can stand up this service on range from all of the best and brightest to even hundreds of others. So we've been running on AWS, VMware's managed cloud on AWS for a number of years. At Dell Technologies World this last year, we announced the ability to do this on Azure. At VMworld, we announced the ability to do this on Google. We have the ability to do this on IBM, inside Dell Technologies with VirtuStream, and we have hundreds of other cloud provider partners that can instantiate this same software-defined data center experience in a managed fashion, somebody else's data center with somebody else's IT staff. And so again, the flexibility, the same way that I had the ability to move up and down in this dimension inside my data center, I have the ability to choose across many of these different clouds as those three sets of laws dictate, as the winds of change data governance requirements for a particular workload, as the financials change and the laws of economics, right? And then even as the laws of physics need to be overcome, partnering with multiple of these cloud provider partners without having to change technology every time, again, is another business imperative for our customers. Well, so we've talked about our data center with our IT staff and somebody else's data center with their IT staff. What about those locations like the RVs of the world that I need to be able to stand up infrastructure where I may not have an IT staff or may not have a true data center, right? This is where we can stand up the VMware managed experience, so I don't have to worry about any of those elements, I don't have to worry about all that hardware compatibility testing, and we do that on Dell EMC. Think of this as a version of VCF on VxRail that arrives to you in a complete managed fashion. It's a half rack or a full rack that might as well figuratively be welded shut. You don't have to worry about managing any of those individual elements. You can, again, simply focus on bringing your workload to that. Somebody else will manage everything remotely from you, right? And there's some key technology in this that allows us to put this in more locations than ever before. This is not necessarily new technology, the ability to stand up data centers at the edge, but the problem in the past was that there were disproportionately expensive leased lines and dedicated circuits that were required to do this, right? And the problem is the availability, connectivity, or the cost is just such that it didn't make it feasible for many of our customers. Well, there's a network that we've been building for the last 35 plus years that is much more prevalent and from a connectivity standpoint. That's the public internet. With the public internet comes issues with latency and speed and certainly security, having to traverse over that. Many customers didn't feel comfortable in doing that. So inside this VMC on Dell EMC is some of the SD-WAN technology from the VMware acquisition of VeloCloud. And this allows us to establish a wide area network over the general purpose internet. And all of the compensation from latency, from the quality of service to the security is handled by this appliance that sits at the top of that rack, right? Meaning that that cloud, that edge data center cloud, can be seamlessly connected over to the rest of my infrastructure over that general purpose internet. This is bringing up, the availability to instantiate a tremendous amount of compute capabilities wherever I need to. Again, now focusing back on letting these three sets of laws be the catalyst for my decisions, not the technical limitations. So in summary, right, you can see that the Dell Technologies multi-cloud vision allows our customers choice when it comes to where they need to instantiate those workloads. They can move on this axis. But we also understand that it's just as important to be able to move on this axis as well, right? Whether it's from flexibility and initial CapEx cost or risk mitigation, right? Hedging your bets by having portability of workloads is finally that last business imperative.
Kris, thank you so much for that demo. That was super informative. Now we know how to get a hold of you and how you guys view the world. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we didn't have a ton of time to do Tinker Time yesterday, so our buddy Rob saved us a bit. Rob, will you go ahead and take away for Tinker Time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, come over here.
It's Tinker Time. We'll try and tell a story. It's Tinker Time with Brett, Kyle, and Corey.
So what we have here is our IoT Predict Kit from ActionPoint, and this is kind of typical of an IoT setup. And so this is primarily geared for predictive maintenance on predictive analytics, predictive maintenance on plant equipment. So what we can see is we have a couple different sensors. So we have a vibration sensor, we have a temperature sensor, and then we have a current sensor, and then they're all connected to a Dell Edge Gateway 3000 right here. And so typically when customers deploy an IoT system right here, it's developed by a third party or one of our partners, and it actually comes with kind of their own management stack. And so this is the IoT Predict Kit here. So if I bang on the vibration sensor right there, you can see it here. And this is great for the operations folks because they're getting the information off the sensor, and in this particular solution, it actually uplinks to public Azure where you can take advantage of the AI and ML capabilities of public Azure. But the problem with this is from an IT perspective, how do you actually manage this Edge Gateway device right here? And while this interface is good for the OT folks, it offers nothing to the IT folks. And then as you start rolling out additional IoT solutions, and this is what we're seeing with a lot of our customers, is okay, this is great for predictive maintenance. Now I have a video surveillance solution. Now I have a building automation solution, and they all are developed by different partners, and they all have their different software stacks, management stacks, and so it becomes very difficult to kind of collect all of that, harness that data from all of those kind of point solutions into a single interface, let alone manage it from an IT perspective. And so this is where VMware decided, they said, hey, we need to have a comprehensive IoT management story. And so that's where kind of VMware Pulse comes in. And so this was really designed for the IT folks to help them identify, enroll, manage, and secure all of these edge devices that are out there. And so we can just click on here, and so here are a bunch of the various templates that we have. So we have our Edge Gateway template and the various sensors, as you can see, they look just like the ones we have right there. And what it does is I can enroll these devices, so I have my Predict Kit, my sensor, and additionally I can kind of see the topology of what's actually out there. Now this is a very simple example, but as you start scaling this out to tens of thousands to millions of devices, you have a very complex topology. And what VMware Pulse does is it allows you to manage all of that. Now, one of the things is there are some capabilities in here to, if you wanted to look at, if you wanted to look at a particular sensor and say, all right, well, what is the data coming off of there? You can, there's some limited capabilities in Pulse, but Pulse really wasn't designed for the OT folks. It was really designed for the IT folks. And so rather than using maybe the software that came bundled with the solution, what if there was a common platform where we can put all of this data in there, aggregate it, and then make useful analytics off of it? And that's kind of where Splunk comes in. So what we've done is, in addition to sending all of this data to Pulse, we're also sending it to Splunk as well, and to kind of the metrics application. And here you go. We have our dashboard right here. So if I start banging on this, we'll start seeing in real time. Let's see. And I can put the temperature sensor here in the ice. And look, is it not refreshing? Just go ahead and refresh that guy real quick. And there we go. So you can start seeing oops. Oh, I know what I need to do. Let's go last 5-minute window there. Which isn't working. Oh. Oops. Sorry about that. Let's go back in here to the 5-minute window, and we'll start seeing this in real time. And so I put my temperature sensor in a cup of ice here. I start banging on this, and you can already see the temperature coming down, and then the spikes with the vibration sensor. But this is great for the OT folks. But then what about the IT folks? They're going back. A lot of the information about what's going on this edge device is actually being stored in the var log messages file on where the IoT gateway actually is, or where the IoT agent's actually residing. Well, what if we piped all of that log information back into Splunk as well? And so now we can go into our reports, and I've actually piped that in here. So here's our
IoT agent errors. So now we have a common platform where both you have for the IT folks and the OT folks. So OT folks, we know what's going on with the gateway. We know what's going on with the sensors. We can take advantage of some of the advanced capabilities of Splunk to do machine learning and additional analytics on this. We can build reports and alerts and dashboards on what's going on in the edge gateway. And now you can bring the OT and the IT guys together. Usually they're on separate organizations. They rarely talk to each other, but now by bringing the data into a common platform across all IoT solutions, now we're bringing those two teams that normally don't talk to each other together, and now we can start looking at things around if you're seeing some wonky stuff coming across your sensor, and the OT guys are saying, well, is it the machine, is it the equipment, what do we need to do? And it's really the agent that's running on here has a weird error and it's not returning the correct information back. Now, by having it in the same platform, those two guys can talk together and they can figure it out a whole lot quicker. So that's kind of what we're doing here in the Solution Center. And again, if there's customers out there that are interested in seeing how this technology works and how it all fits together, that's what we're here for. Bring them in, and we're happy to have a conversation with them.
Rob, thank you so much for that Tinker Time demo. It was really interesting to see how OT and IoT integrate in with our IT strategy.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. So, Kris, thank you so much for the demo. How do we go ahead and get a hold of you guys again?
Sure. So your account teams can go ahead and request an engagement, or you can go out to delltechnologies.com/solution centers. And remember, this is where we actually make it real, because we have one advantage that you don't at a lot of our other locations, and that's the equipment that you see behind us.
And I see that you have the lights for Splunk Pink. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a massive investment that we've made in millions of dollars throughout the globe of equipment. None of this is running Dell IT. None of this is running the Solution Centers IT. This is all customer available equipment.
Wow.
Wow, that's great. Now, where can we find you all on social?
Sure. So again, that Solution Centers, delltechnologies.com/solution centers has linked to all of our social media profiles as needed.
Great. Thanks so much. Well, this has been it for day one from Austin of Breakfast with the Beards. Till next time.
Cool.
Sorry for that.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Breakfast with the Beards. Breakfast with the Beards is part of the Big Data Beard road trip to Splunk's Conf 2019. Be sure to check out all of our great content at bigdatabeard.com, and also follow our podcast in your favorite podcast app simply by searching Big Data Beard. This amazing adventure would not be possible without our incredible sponsors. We thank you, Dell Technologies, VMware, Red River Technologies, Arrow Electronics, and Converging Data for making the road trip to Splunk.conf 2019 possible. We'll see you down the road.